And more now on the 14 points published by Iranian state media, which it says make up the bulk of the memorandum for a US-Iran ceasefire. Shahram Akbazadeh is a professor of Middle East politics at Deakin University and the director of the Middle East Studies Forum, and he joins us now from Melbourne. Shahram Akbazadeh, welcome. So some apparent detail is emerging around this agreement. The caveat with this discussion is we don't really know for sure until Friday, but based on what you've seen so far, what are the key positives out of this, apparently for the US first off?
Well, thanks for having me. Clearly, as you suggested, we don't have an exact listing, exact wording for the document, but it looks like the end of hostilities and the opening of the Strait of Hormuz. That's going to be very significant for President Trump because he is under immense domestic pressure to end the war and revive the global economy. We've already seen that NASDAQ and stock markets have responded positively to the news. So there is hope that this will be the starting point of the end of the conflict.
Point 9 is reiterating Iran's commitment in the non-proliferation treaty not to produce nuclear weapons. Surely that's a positive for the US as well?
Well, Iran has been insisting from the word go that it is not pursuing nuclear weapons. So that item on the list simply reiterates a standing Iranian position.
Right. Okay, let's turn to Iran now. What are the key positives for Iran out of this?
I think Iran enters this negotiation from a position of strength. The fact that Iran has not collapsed, the fact that the march of the US military has not forced Iran to surrender is seen to be a victory by the Iranians. By the same token, Iran has found new leverage in its control of the Strait of Hormuz. So the negotiations initially, in fact, the war started to begin with in February this year over Iran's nuclear program, and there were talks of regime change. Now, none of that seems to be on the table. Now, only they're discussing how the Strait of Hormuz will open and how they would stop fighting each other. So I think that's a major strategic victory for Iran.
And also the money that's headed Iran's way for reconstruction, point 7, $300 billion to be contributed for the reconstruction.
I think that's probably a bit fanciful of Iran to expect that amount of money to be paid. That would be politically very dangerous for Trump to allow transfer of funds to Iran. Some of that, I think, could be money that Iran expects. Regional countries, private investors would invest in reconstruction. So that's to be debated. But also there is some money that Iran has frozen assets in Western banks. This money was frozen when the revolution happened in 1979. Iran had already paid under the old regime, Pahlavi regime. Iran had already paid for the purchase of US military assets and equipment. And the revolution put a stop to the transfer of military hardware to Iran. And the assets were practically frozen. So some of that is I think Iran is expecting the frozen assets would be returned.
If this ceasefire holds, I'm interested in your perspective as a professor of Middle East politics. What about how has the relationship changed between the Gulf states and Iran through this, and countries like Jordan?
Well, the relationship has changed dramatically. There were many Arab states in the Persian Gulf that before the war were trying to build ties, build diplomatic relations with Iran, improve their trade with Iran. Even Saudi Arabia was trying to pursue a rapprochement policy with Iran. And this was reciprocated by Iran. what happened during the war was that Iran started hitting those countries. So even Qatar, that had a very good relationship managing the oil, the gas fields, a shared gas field together with Iran, even Qatar wasn't spared attack by Iran. So relationship has seriously deteriorated, and public opinion in the Arab countries in the region have seriously been turned negative towards Iran. And recovering from this really low position is going to be a major challenge.
Yeah. And now back to this memorandum. What about the fact that Israel is not a signatory?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think Israel was very much a party to the conflict. United States and Israel both attacked Iran this year, in February this year. And Iran has insisted that any violation of peace ceasefire by Israel in Lebanon is going to cancel and undermine the peace deal. So that's something that President Trump is very much aware of. We have heard President Trump talk about Prime Minister Netanyahu undermining peace process. So I think that's going to be a difficult challenge for Trump.
And how does this agreement, as we know it so far, compare with the Obama-era agreement, which Donald Trump has been so critical of over the years?
That's the irony of the situation. President Trump believed that he could achieve a better deal, and he tore up JCPOA in 2018. But what he has achieved right now is nowhere near what JCPOA had put in place. JCPOA had put in place a detailed mechanism of control and monitoring over Iran's nuclear program, making sure that uranium enrichment was within 3.6% limit in return for improved economic ties and removal of sanctions so Iran could recover economically. So what we have at the moment is not even talking about Iran's nuclear program or talking about Iran's missile program or its support for proxies. All we are talking about and all we have achieved right now is simply a cessation of hostilities for the opening of the Strait of Hormuz, and that is nowhere near what JCPOA had achieved.
Yeah, and we don't know what's going to happen in the negotiations period in the following 2 months, but we know what we know so far. And what does this indicate about the wisdom or otherwise of attacking Iran in the first place? Can Donald Trump sell this as a victory?
Well, Donald Trump will obviously sell it as a victory. That's what he does. He has his own universe, and he sees it. He presents everything that he does as magnificent. So he is going to claim that this has been a major peace deal, and he deserves another Nobel Peace Prize for achieving this ceasefire. But I think all observers, it's really difficult to pull the wool over people's eye and suggest that this is anything beyond a temporary cessation of hostilities that is only opening the door, preparing the ground for more detailed discussion over Iran's nuclear program.
Okay, Shahram Akbazadeh, thanks so much for talking to us from Melbourne.
Thanks for having me.